Good afternoon, everybody. All right, let's try it again. I know it's right after lunch. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. There we go. That's the excitement we want. I'm Thomas Button. I'm the host for this session. I'm delighted to welcome you all to the AI Mandate, Balancing Innovation and Institutional Security with our CIO and CISO panel. In today's session, the AI Mandate, we're going to address one of the most pressing challenges facing institutions, governing AI adoption responsibly without sacrificing its transformational potential. And I'm sure every one of us faces that every single day. Today, I'm welcoming others to join me on stage today. I'll start with Chad for Ricky's.
Good enough.
Gemini Adoption Solutions Engineer from Google. Jillian Georges.
Got it.
Higher Ed Lead from the East, Google Workspace and AI for Education. And then Brandon Rich, Director of AI Enablement, University of Notre Dame. And then finally, but not last or not least, Jason Meslanka, Deputy CIO and CTO, University of Illinois at Chicago. Following their discussion, they will open it up for about 10 minutes worth of Q&A from this group. So with that, please welcome the panelists to the stage.
All right. Everyone can hear me? Cool. Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here, and thanks to Internet2 Net Plus for hosting us today. We have an awesome panel for you, and it's going to be, I describe it as an experience. It will be a bit of a panel, but then also a little bit of demonstration. So you'll kind of, we'll weave back and forth so that you can see in practice what we're talking about in theory. We've also left plenty of time for questions at the end, so I know it's not a huge audience. Maybe the other 100, 200 people that are waiting to come in are just walking slowly, but when they all get into, please feel free to ask questions. We want this to feel like a discussion. We know that security is a hot button issue, and also it can be really sensitive, and there are lots of questions about it. So don't let those questions stew in your head. If you have the question, someone else probably does too, so feel free to step up to a mic. I'm going to do some introductions in just a second, but before I do that, I want to tell a little story. So a few months ago, a provost sat across from me and looked at their phone, and something they said really stayed with me. They said, "Jillian, I feel like we've left every door and window to the campus unlocked, but we're afraid to go inside because we're afraid that the house is already full." And basically, they knew that AI is happening right now. It is not just the future. It is all of our students and faculty and staff. We're using it in one way or another. They were afraid that they had already lost control of their data, that they had already lost control of their privacy, which is so important to them in their research, in their teaching and learning, and the way the students are showing up to classrooms. And they felt like these security breaches and data leaks were just inevitable if they stayed still. So inadvertently, this would force faculty and students to innovate in the shadows, which is not what they want in a place of leadership within their universities. So they felt really unprotected and unguided. And they wanted to move from a place of that kind of defensive silence and move to a place where they felt like they had control over their choices and the choices that the students and faculty and staff were making. So they basically were describing this campus where the IT team felt really worried about security. Just by a show of hands, does that feel a little bit familiar to you? You're a little worried right now. They were worried about academic integrity, they were worried about budget, and meanwhile the students were already using these tools, and they weren't being guided on how to use them well, or ethically, or in a way that they felt like they could in a classroom. So we know AI is a now skill, but the fear of a single catastrophic data leak has made us move at the speed of bureaucracy while the world is moving at the speed of light. It's a paralyzing paradox. The longer we wait to secure the environment, the more vulnerable we actually become. So we want to move to a place of, instead of that defensive silence, to that informed empowerment, because the one thing more dangerous than a security risk you're managing is a security risk that you're not. I'm realizing this is starting to sound a little bit like the trailer of a horror movie, But it doesn't have to be. It's a place that we want to be in right now where we can openly discuss kind of our fears around security so that we can take those lessons and start implementing them more at the speed of the AI innovation that's happening in the background or the foreground. So welcome today to the AI Mandate, Balancing Innovation and Institutional Security. Thank you all for being here. We're going to talk about how to break that paralysis a little bit. I'm Jillian Yorgis. I am the Google for Workspace lead for the East and some of Central, but I work with customers all across the country and in Canada on their workspace strategies, on their storage strategies, and now their AI strategies as well. I've worked in identity on a cybersecurity team here at Google, as well as some learning and development training teams. I'm joined today by Chad Frerichs, our fantastic higher ed solutions engineer. And I'm also joined by two leaders who refuse to stay in that place of paralysis. And I will let them introduce themselves. And please welcome our two guests.
All right. Hi, folks. I'm Brandon Rich. I'm with the University of Notre Dame. I run a team called AI Enablement, and we think about these things all the time. So happy to be here and chat about it with you.
I'm Jason Masong. I'm the CTO at the University of Illinois Chicago, about 2 miles southwest of here. I'm the CTO there and seemingly responsible for AI enablement without a team, like Brandon has.
Can you tell us how many Gemini are enabled at your campus right now, if you know the number? If you don't, we know it.
I'm not sure of the number, but we have enabled it for all faculty, staff, and students. So that's going to be about 13,000 students, probably about 5,000 faculty, and a whole lot of staff.
Perfect.
And additional sort of user types as well. So it's a large number, and I've seen some of the adoption numbers recently, and a lot of people using it.
And both Illinois and Illinois, Chicago, and Notre Dame are dual campuses. So they have Google Workspace and also Microsoft. So that's an important thing to note because that is the case with many of our schools. Jason.
We have plans, I should say, over in the next 4 weeks and into the fall to enable for all 35-ish thousand students, as well as 16,000 faculty and staff that work at UIC today. As of a couple weeks ago, the answer would have been funny. It was just me and one other person. Now it's about 150 people as we're doing a pilot group with some faculty members.
Great. We could talk about the pilots for days too, because that is another great way to start. I know Notre Dame has also gone through several pilot phases, but another great way to start and feel like you can manage your security in a really small contained environment before bringing it to scale. So we're not going to talk about pilots today, but please feel free to pull Chad and I aside after this in the hallway, wherever you see us. We'll be here the rest of the weekend, and we'd love to help answer your questions. Okay, so we're excited to spend the next 30 minutes or so with leaving plenty of time for questions, putting these security measures into practice. So we'll share some concrete examples, and you'll see those. Chad will show us. And I'll be asking Jason and Brandon questions about security best practices, but also concerns and fears. And then we'll alternate, like I said, back to Chad illustrating. Your perspective is vital for this conversation, so we welcome your questions. Okay, first question. Actually, before we do that, let's kind of outline our commitment at Google, our commitment to security. So Google's commitment to AI is deeply rooted in our mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. I guess acceptable also. AI is a key enabler of that mission. We're investing heavily in research and development and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. So think about all of the AI that you currently use, from Google Search to Gemini to Google Translate to Notebook LM to even Google Maps, which is shrinking our hippocampus, as we learned yesterday in the keynote. These are just a few examples of how Google AI is making a positive impact. Most importantly, we're dedicated to developing AI responsibly. That means prioritizing ethical considerations and transparency and data security in everything that we do. I will turn it over to Chad right now to highlight only a few of his favorite features of Google Workspace that are pertinent to enabling Gemini and security.
Yeah, one of the biggest concerns is my data safe, right? Gemini is committed to saying yes to that question. None of your data will be used to train the models or be publicly available. It's your data. It stays within your workspace as long as you're using Workspace, right? So the key differentiator there is your account within a workspace or is it a consumer account? When it's in a workspace, we can definitely answer safe. It's also checks all of those regulatory boxes that everyone is concerned about. FERPA, HIPAA, all of those acronyms that we're all very much aware of. We can definitely check those boxes when we're dealing with Gemini in Workspace and all of your data that lives there.
Great. And you'll see some of that in just
Yeah.
a second. Okay, so first question for the panelists. To get us started, I'm curious how you are both setting that strategic foundation from Notre Dame, who is already up and running with 25,000 plus Gemini enabled, to University of Illinois Chicago, who is in the process right now of figuring out how to get to that, and almost there, sounds like. So for both of you, how mature is your university on your data and AI journey? And what's going well? What are some of the gaps?
Right, so at Notre Dame, I would like to say we're fairly mature, but one of the things I think I always want to say to everybody is don't get stuck kind of looking over your shoulder at other institutions. We're all figuring this out at different levels in different ways. There are definitely things that we are still trying to get our arms around, and it is this huge effort. One of the things I think that we're doing well is that we have figured out how to scale up AI literacy. We're working with staff, faculty, and students. We're partnering with people all over the campus. My team runs something that we call the AI Accelerator Program. It's kind of a structured engagement where we help people understand how does this AI stuff work, when is my data protected, and when is it not. How do I understand what are the approved AI tools that we have on campus and how to use those well? And we help them to develop use cases. So figuring out how to make that a campus-wide offering. We also have classes that we run through our HR kind of course offerings, get people hands-on. I think this proliferation of AI literacy and understanding of the tools is really working pretty well for us. In terms of gaps, I think you'll find those everywhere. I mean, the proliferation of tools. We're always fielding requests for new and different tools and trying to understand what can we enable for campus, and there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And I think everyone would, if they were being honest, say that one of the gaps is measuring ROI. If you have a particular project that you started from some baseline, you're automating a process, you've got good data, great, you can tell that story. But when your impact is, as a lot of ours are, ours definitely is diffuse. It's spread across a lot of different people with personal productivity, things that we see and things that we don't see. Capturing the time or time savings or quality improvement on that is kind of challenging.
I don't know that there's a single answer on maturity at a large R1 that is fairly decentralized in everything that it does. So there's a bunch of sort of micro answers to that question. And if you talk to people in our research enterprise, they would tell you that they've been doing some of this work for a long time. And even in our enablement group, Himanshu is in the room right there, the things that we have been enabling faculty to do with research is fairly mature. And if you talk to our teaching and learning group, you might get a different answer where they're dealing with more fear and uncertainty that I know we'll talk about later. And so that conversation's a little further behind. I think more recently, I and my team have really thought about the impact that we can have on business processes and business process improvement and that side of the university. It's a less political topic at that point. It becomes a much easier conversation. And so that maturity, I don't know that I can necessarily define it, but goals and vision and agreement across the enterprise as to what we're going to do in that space is pretty significant. And so who our partners are going to be, where we're going to build these things, what we're going to change, and how we're going to measure it is something that we've been thinking a lot recently on that. I think, things that are going well, it is interesting, I think about this a lot. Awareness, there is not a lot in my career in IT where there is broad awareness of IT things, and not to diminish AI to that, but let's be honest for a moment, that they're talking about on the Today Show. when no-code solutions came out, there weren't faculty coming in and being like, talk to me about no-code solutions. Like, nobody cared. And so AI, there is broad awareness, whether people are bothered, concerned, or excited, they are coming to us and asking questions. In the last week, I can pull out 15 emails from different corners of the university asking questions about when they can access this, or what they can do, or data this, or data that. So awareness is, I think, the thing that is going the best. Gaps, and we'll talk a bunch about this today. It is really hard, no matter how robust your data governance is, no matter how great your technical safeguards are, it's really hard to get people who think about writing books on philosophy all day to think about data classifications. It's not going to work that well. And so how do we put in place a program that overcomes that hurdle that will probably never go away?
Yeah. Thank you both. That was very helpful and probably really resonates with a lot of the folks in this audience as well. Chad is going to show us how some of those practices or security risks are ameliorated, and just take us through a couple of our kind of key features in the admin console.
Yeah, so you mentioned data governance. I'm going to show you how easy it is to start implementing that within Google Workspace. I'm going to bounce over to a fundamentals tenant. So this is free for higher ed Google Workspace tenant, and how easy it is to implement simple DLP rules to help govern the data within it. So I'm going to bounce to the security and data protection section, and I'm going to pop into a rule here, and I'm actually going to show you how easy it is. We do have templates, but I want to show you a certain section, my favorite section within DPL. I am a huge nerd, so I have favorite sections inside of the Workspace console, forgive me. But we're going to pop into a new rule, and I'm just going to click through here quick. We're going to block an external. And we're going to go here. And I'm going to go to my add condition, and I'm going to body. So in here, this is a predefined. We give you these out of the box. There is a giant list here. I'm going to scroll up. I'm going to scroll and click that again so it's easier to see. There is a giant list here of predefined DLP rules. And a common mistake is that you see how the first ones are designated by country and the data types that might attach to those. Don't stop scrolling and don't just look for the US at the bottom. There are some really interesting ones in this list, like web tokens. Not something you probably want bouncing around your workspace freely. I can't find it right now, but there's like literally SQL backups is listed in here. Something you don't want everyone to have access to, right? So you probably, oh, there it is, I found it, database backup. And of course, towards the bottom, there is USA, all of the PHI, PII is all down here near the bottom. So all of that is pre-built, pre-canned. You can just click this and be confident that it's going to start flagging those documents with that type of data in there. So it's super easy to do. I'm going to bounce out of this one. And we talk about high-level research data potentially residing in Workspace. So because we're on a free fundamentals tenant, you can still look for those types of documents based on regex. How many of you here are a regex expert or have used it in the past? Do you know what regular expressions are? I see a couple hands, nerds, awesome. And guess what? Gemini is really good at writing regex. No longer do you have to remember that crazy syntax. You can just say, Gemini, write me a regex for this, right? And it will do it, and that's what I did here. So what I'm doing is blocking my very top secret project Valkyrie documentation is in here. So when I get over, so another key point here in DLP is this setting right here, especially for Google Drive. I always recommend this new section that applies that DLP to all people with access to that document, not just the viewers. So what this setting does, and it's key when we're talking about Gemini and Notebook, if we set that to disable download, print, and copy, it stops you from being able to add that to a Notebook or a Gemini prompt. So that's key when we integrate all of this with Gemini and Notebook inside a workspace, is this setting right here with this value. And then next, my Project Valkyrie, I promise, it's in the detector section. We're not going to, based on time, going to bounce in and see what that looks like. There was enough of you that realize what regex is. So and then when we start talking about the Plus license and those advanced capabilities, I'm going to bounce over to a Plus tenant really quickly. Again, data classification is here, just like before, but you'll start to see a couple of other sections available to Plus customers, specifically this default classification. I've already set one up that we can bounce through quickly. Oh, something to note here is you can apply these default classifications to users, groups, OUs. I've applied one to the researchers OU, where I'm going to automatically apply a top secret label or highly sensitive label to anything created by users in that OU. So, and then it's actually a sensitivity label with 3 categories of sensitivity. So top secret, meh, and anyone can see this, right? So a user in that OU creates a document, they're going to be prompted to select one of those classification designations, and then you can then build DLP rules regulating those classifications to help protect your data. The next thing that's really pretty cool is AI classification. So with an AI Pro license, you can train a model. So I'm not going to poke into this because it takes some work. You have to train the model manually. So designate AI Pro licenses to a few of your users, have them self-classify some documents, and then point the AI classification at those, have it build its model, and then enable it. And then anyone with an AI Pro license or with access to a shared drive. So that's the key piece, right? So hopefully, we're putting sensitive information into a shared drive and then adding a member to that shared drive that has an AI Pro license. Then the AI classification can start applying labels automatically, which then you can apply DLP rules to and start to protect your data within Workspace. What questions do you have? I see none, but we have Q&A at the end. I know that's all very complex, and I went very fast, but I love to talk about this stuff, so come find me if I piqued any sort of interest from you. Back to the deck.
And don't worry, there's more. You haven't seen everything from Chad. He's got lots of tricks up his sleeve. So you can head to the next question. Cool. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the idea of a citizen developer, which Chad will take us into in a bit. But before we do that, the promise of AI is productivity, time savings. But the reality often starts with user fear. What cultural or organizational hurdles did you face in getting buy-in from faculty, staff, students regarding AI data security, and how did you overcome them?
It's an interesting framing in the past tense. It is ongoing. I think, again, getting buy-in is a complex thing to do, and we work on this every single day. We've taken a few stances in terms of our AI enablement that I think have helped with maybe those who are less likely to buy into what we're doing. We are not, as a university, even if we had it, we're not going to drop millions with one company to just buy 1 million licenses and hope that that solves the problem. We are going to focus on having a broad stack, ensuring that people have access to all sorts of tools, and ensuring that we're responsible with the university's money. So that's the first piece. Everything we've done so far, which I think, in some ways hurts our enablement, but also gets us clout with certain segments of the university, has been opt-in. And so the tools that we've offered up to this time have been completely opt-in. And there's a few reasons for that. We have a number of researchers and faculty who are also part of our academic medical center who have very explicit no AI on this data rules for various reasons. Some of it I think will be overcome over time. Some of it is not especially impactful to the work that they're actually doing, but that has put us in the position to say, okay, you are going to need to make an active choice to participate or to use this tool. Like I said before, sort of the difference between research and business processes is understanding those communities, talking to them, being a part of their various governance structures, and being transparent with everyone that we work with. I was at Faculty Executive Senate just the other week, and I shared in the room for all of them to recognize. I get emails every week that say, why can't I put OpenClaw on my work laptop? And also emails that say, when are you going to ban ChatGPT? Those are two very different ends of a spectrum, and we're in a position where we really have to find a way to work with all of those folks.
Yeah, it is an extremely heterogeneous environment out there for AI enthusiasm. It definitely depends on sort of the area of the university that you're talking to. We field all the time requests for software, and one of the things when we first started, we had this generative AI task force. We said we know we need tools that allow people to use AI safely, that keep Notre Dame data secure. And there are a lot of ways to approach that. Some folks have gone sort of the open source route. They're going to keep models on premises, things like that. It truly was quite notable for us when Google put the Gemini tools under the core license. I used to joke, I thought this job would be super exciting, technology, spend most of the time on change management and the rest reading terms of service or understanding the Google license matrix. But we've got great people that help us to suss that stuff out. And being able to say to people that you can think of this just in the same way as Google Drive was really helpful to us. Because the buy-in was not so much about how's this going to protect my data. That was actually the argument to get them there. Because truthfully, the real argument was, okay, you want to turn this thing on for all of campus. And yes, we need a baseline tool that everybody can use. We need something that we can reference in all of our AI literacy efforts. We want this sort of equitable layer that we know everybody's got some baseline AI capabilities. But to certain ears on campus, that sounds like, oh, you want to turn on a cheating tool, right? For everyone? You just want to give them that? And so there are a lot of ways to combat that. I mean, the first is, of course, these tools are already out there. And that leads you to this data conversation, because the big difference there, if they've got a third-party tool, whatever it happens to be, what we can offer is a tool that is very, very capable, but also keeps your data safe, keeps their data safe, and professor keeps your own data safe, because they are taking your lecture notes, your syllabi, whatever, and putting it into a query. So that was a big part of the argument. That data security it's not just for them, it's for you as well. We're trying to give them a path to more responsible use.
I love it. Thank you both. And I know Jason said that they are trying to diversify and make sure that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket by buying 1 million of one license. But if anyone in this audience would like to buy 1 million Gemini AI Pro licenses, I'll talk to you after. No, just kidding. I think you brought up some really great points, and I think part of getting the buy-in is then making that promise to securely enable it for the whole campus. And when you do that, now what do you have access to? Now what can your students, faculty, and staff do? Which kind of brings us to this exciting topic of a citizen developer. We can all be developers in a sense. So Chad is going to walk us through some of our tools that help make that possible. And I just want to also go back and say that we do offer those enterprise-grade data protections with our at no cost Gemini and Notebook LM features. So you don't have to buy 100 million licenses. You can get them all for free.
Yeah, so a couple things I heard there was buy-in and security. And a great way to get buy-in is to help people solve the problems they have, right? And then security, we already talked about that with DLP and what's available within Workspace. But what not very many people realize is that we have a low-code, no-code option that is a core service within Workspace called AppSheet. And then when you tie AppScript to an AppSheet, you have superpowers. And guess what's good at writing AppScript? Gemini is very good at writing AppScript. So I'm going to bounce into a short demo, and this is a real-life demo. So that came from a customer just last week. They have an approval process for alumni to get an email address provisioned to them. So they were also deprecating, for some cost consolidation reasons, their e-form system, whatever that might have been. So I came up with a solution for them, all inside of the Google Workspace ecosystem, that pretty much replicated and actually made it better than their existing system, which was a manual account provisioning process after an approval process through the eForm system. You can do that all very easily, very quickly, from within the Workspace ecosystem with AppSheet and a little bit of AppScript to provision that account. I'm going to bounce you through it quickly because we're already pushing time here. So what I suggested was they start with a simple Google form, which they could embed in a website or do whatever, maybe an alumni-centric website where they put some basic information. That information bounces to a sheet. I also, just for demonstration purposes, put a master alumni list here, right? So the app script, or the app sheet on the other side is going to match submissions to a master list. A key thing to know in AppSheet is you can connect it via various connectors to actual alumni databases. That's a thing. I'm not going to go that deep today. So it's as easy as looking at your data, going to extensions, clicking AppSheet, and clicking Create App. And a Gemini LLM on the background is going to analyze that spreadsheet and do its best to give you a base level AppSheet app that might look a little bit like this one. So what it does here, Iowa Chad, that's me. I submitted an alumni email address request, and it pops up here. The master alumni list here, if we pop back to the data, a key thing to notice here is I have a permissions column. So imagine a different type of data set. This is for demonstration purposes only, right? But I have a permissions column. When I log in, I only see the rows in this data set that I have permission to see based on my email address being in that permissions column. So think that through a little bit and see how you can regulate access to what's in that sheet. And then I can process this request. So if I click in here and I click this approve button, what I've done is taken that Gemini created app script, attached it to this button in this low code, no code environment. And what that's going to do, hopefully that loads fast, is this Gemini created environment. If you're a coder, this is all JSON. How many of you are familiar with AppSheet and/or AppScript? Anyone? Oh, are you excited about it now? This is amazing. This is how you get buy-in. This is how citizen developers, the people with problems in your business office, faculty with this annoying thing that they want to solve, can easily develop, based on a sheet of data, an app where they can interact with that data. They can ask Gemini, this script in particular is going to use this particular user's access to the admin SDK, and it's going to provision an account, move them to the alumni OU, which is already set up, where all the services except Gmail are disabled, et cetera, et cetera. And I did this in about 15 minutes. I've done it 1,000 times. So others maybe take a couple hours, but it's all Gemini driven in the back end from the app sheet creation. And the cool part is you don't have to even start with a sheet of data. Oops. If you go, wow, this is a brand new demo environment, sorry. You can literally go to appsheet.com and just ask Gemini to help you create an app, and off you go. All of this is built within Workspace with the same data protections that every other core service come with. So data security and buy-in, both check. Back to you.
Can I follow up on that real quick?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this is really pretty cool. I mean, we're seeing it at Notre Dame. AppSheet and AppScript have been around for a while. It's frankly not something I've paid a lot of attention to. It's just sort of something there in the background that I didn't know a lot about. People are finding this organically because they think, oh, AI is going to help me automate things. And they have Gemini, and they just go, hey, Gemini, like, how can I do this thing? And it will lead them to AppScript. I've run into people that have done some really cool stuff with AppScript, and they're not developers. Our admin assistant for our CIO built an incredibly complex like event tracking thing in a spreadsheet. And I kind of knew the answer before I asked this, but I was still surprised. You don't have any like development background at all, do you? She goes, no, nothing. And I'm like, it's kind of amazing. Like, how did you do this? And it's all with AppScript, yeah, sorry, similar names. The cool thing about it is it runs in the context of the user. So it has all your permissions and your access control. And if you share it to somebody else, it can run in their context as well. So it's pretty cool. If you're Google Campus, check it out.
Yeah, and I just want to follow on with what you just said, right? So I showed a very simplistic example. I have helped organizations build entire IT systems, including trouble ticket, inventory, asset tracking, all of that using AppSheet based on spreadsheets. You don't have to base it just on a spreadsheet. There's, again, data connectors. You can set up an AppSheet database or connect it to a BigQuery database. There's all these various connections we don't have time to get into, but you can build incredibly simplistic all the way to advanced, cost-consolidated type of solutions, all within Workspace in a core service.
Perfect segue, because my next question is just around the other security controls that you have adopted on your campus, whether that be, excuse me, through OU or context-aware access. What are some of the other controls that you've adopted?
Okay, so I had to ask my esteemed Google admin colleagues about this one. So we have a lot of storage options on campus, and we've actually been building tools to help people navigate this. Google Drive is our primary collaboration space. So we have highly sensitive information. We store in a special shared drive where we've locked that. Now we've blocked external sharing, things like that. There's nothing currently in place that would say keep like a Gemini query from accessing that. There are some ways we could maybe do that. We do have DLP rules that are oriented around our data classification. So we have 4 levels of data sensitivity that we define. Of course, the challenge there is, how do you distinguish different types of data? Like, we can define them, but how do you, as an end user, know whether you're working with internal or sensitive data that can sound very similar? So that's a challenge. But we have not used the context-aware controls, and we really only have 2 OUs. We sort of employees and students, but within that we are ad hoc, sort of working things with Google Groups for service-level access.
Okay.
Can I follow up real quick before
Sure.
Jason? So a couple things there that pop in my head is with an AI Pro license and a shared folder. If you'll remember back when I was quickly demoing DLP, there's the new AI data classification where you could have folks apply those labels and then train the model on that and then have the AI classification in the future automatically label those and then apply the DLP rules. So something you might want to look at for the, and that'll, sorry, Jillian, but that would only really require 1 AI Pro license for a user that has access to that shared drive.
So to come at it from the other angle, Google Drive exists on campus, but is not our primary. We are a primary Microsoft shop. All of our email and messaging exists in there. We also are a Box campus, so a ton of our data sits in there. We have recently, outside of anything Brandon already said, we've also recently implemented a tool that does automatic labeling of data. So we have all the same classifications. And so what that tool does is probably using AI. I don't even actually know. Probably our CISOs here, she could tell you. It goes through and labels all those tools in order to work with the DLP rules in place, which then impact how Copilot, the Microsoft product, will be allowed to interact with various data types, so on and so forth. So automatic labeling, I think, is, however any tool does it, is really important because you are not going to get users to sit down and outside of maybe some PHI in very regulated environments, you might get that, but you're not going to get users to sit down and label internal documents for budget reasons as such on their own. So that automatic labeling, coupled with DLP rules and understanding how those DLP rules interact with various AI tools is super important.
Great, and Chad, you're gonna get a 2-for-1 here because he's gonna show us the Privacy Hub through Notebook LM, so you'll get to see a little bit of both.
Yeah, so I'm going to bounce over to this notebook all of this data privacy and internal compliance can be super confusing to faculty, staff, students. So why not throw all of that into a notebook, LM, and then share that out? And so what I've done here is just simple. I threw the Privacy Hub in here. This is all available online, so I just threw that in there. I also grabbed someone's
Columbia. Yeah.
Columbia University's AI policy guide from the internet, and then I also grabbed another university's faculty and staff handbook, as well as another Google Workspace. So there's a couple different privacy hubs. So the Google Workspace Privacy Hub gives more general guidance on privacy questions, and the Gemini one is focused on our AI privacy guidance. So my suggestion to you is this. This is all very confusing, right? So let AI help your stakeholders answer those questions for you.
Great. Awesome. And before I hand it over to you all for questions, because we have about 10 minutes left, I would just like to ask both Brandon and Jason, the single biggest new security threat introduced by generative AI that keeps you up at night. If you don't want to go to the dark side, you can also answer just what is one actionable takeaway that you would give this audience. You can answer both if you want, or one, but those are the two last final thoughts.
No, I can go dark.
Yeah, same.
No problem. I think, as a human person living in the world, not in my job, it's easy to think about deepfakes and the struggle there. But I would also say that people have been falling for nonsense long before the president posted pictures of himself looking like Jesus. And so it doesn't really change the narrative as much as some of the other things that I think really impact me in my work role. So the slow release of our data by people who don't understand everything that we've talked about for the past 42 minutes into various models, into shadow AI, as people like to call it, I think is one of the most concerning things. People are going to use what they use, and they don't understand the long-term impact, which we cannot claw back. And I think the other thing is some of the agentic stuff, and I referenced OpenClaw earlier. Prompt injection, let's say, and I'm not a security expert by any means, has always been sort of scary. There's a hole in an application on a website. Oh, terrifying. But it's more terrifying when you think about the idea, to put it quite simply, that some agentic tool has access to a desktop, reads an email, and the email says, hey, go do this thing, and it does that thing from inside of our network. And I think those two things are truly pretty terrifying.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Prompt injection it's had an interesting arc, because it has gone from this thing that is sort of academically interesting because it was all about input that you give to an AI and maybe cause it to override its security safety protocols. So that was a very limited blast radius. Maybe it's going to say something back to you that you rather it not. Now it's a whole thing. I've got the coolest stories I can share. It would take way more than 6.5 minutes about prompt injection in the wild now. Now that we have more agentic tools out there, go check out the way that a tool called Klein was owned by the title of a GitHub issue. Honestly, it's a pretty cool story. And I think, I tell people, if you are worried about the trajectory of a technology career in the age of AI, go into InfoSec. You will be gainfully employed for the foreseeable future, because it's opening up incredibly. So there is what happens when, agentic AI meets unfiltered text on the internet. This guy named Simon Willison talks about the lethal trifecta, and its access to data, and its agentic capabilities, and its privilege access. There's probably more at the three, but it sounds right. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about just what happens in regular use when you've got people, using these more agentic tools. They're taking actions on their behalf. They're getting tired of hitting approve, and they're like, always approve. And then they really don't know what's happening next. So that's very interesting. And I think in terms of InfoSec, we're seeing with these more advanced models, the traditional attack surface is getting much wider because they're really good at finding just vulnerabilities in software. So there's a lot of things to think about, not maybe to be worried about, but to be on guard about. You asked, though, to spin it positive, and I would a little bit. I think our biggest defense against this is user education. you're right. This is unlike any other sort of technology moment that I've seen, because everybody out there wants to be involved. They're downloading stuff, they're trying things, they're excited. And they don't know what they don't know. So what we have to do is we have to understand that's happening and not try to be the IT folks putting our finger in the dike and just sort of pretending it's not happening. We got to go meet them where they are. They're trying all kinds of things. Great. Let's talk to them about how that could put data at risk, how we can create some safe paths for them. Let's try to be faster about how we approve tools and let people experiment in safe ways. Let's build like identity sandboxes that can allow them to do things that maybe would be a little bit more risky if they were just off on their own. We need to be out there engaging with them. That's how we both enable innovation and keep data safe.
Yeah, 100% agree. Enable users with trusted tools. And then don't forget, you don't even need to talk to them about this, but do all the hard work behind the scenes to put technical safeguards in place where they can exist. And you don't need to talk to users about that, but don't forget about the hard work that exists.
We can help
in
with
the
that part.
shadows. Yes.
Yes. So we're not going to answer questions about Jesus, Trump, or lethal trifectas, but we will answer other questions. And before I turn it over to the very long line that I see forming of question askers, I just want to say thank you for this time today. Thank you to both of you for dedicating some of your time today and just for partnering with Google on all things AI and security. Today we've covered a lot of ground. We covered establishing a strategic foundation, empowering the citizen developer, ensuring data sovereignty and privacy guarantees, and then providing some actionable advice. So we're happy to continue that conversation outside of this room as well. Please flag us all down. But in the meantime, yeah, we'd love to take your question.
Thank you for the wonderful panel. And thank you for shaming us out that there was no line. See,
I've spoken into existence.
I think this is all wonderful. I think this was a hard panel to do. You have a demo going on one side and you have perspective. But I think you did it very well. So congratulations on the format. I think the question is a little bit more long-term. Google itself is expecting to spend $1 trillion in building new data centers, right? I think across the industry, the numbers are even more crazy. Eventually, a price hike is coming. Eventually, initial subsidies are going to end. And higher ed is actually, if you look at the spending, especially on the public schools, is actually going down. We talk about population cliff. We talk about research funding under stress. So the revenue sources are going down for many different reasons, and price hikes are coming. How are we going to prepare for that? ROI conversation right now looks very different from what it will look like in 5 years. So this is a question for all of you.
I've got some thoughts on this because we're continuing with this right now. I think we've seen a really interesting arc, which is that early on in AI, you could sort of, build your own boat. You could get an open source front end, and you could provide access to models, and that was the experience. You could give, Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, whatever. Great. But we're seeing a real differentiation now in the products that are built on top of those models that are not so easily replicated in open source, and so, that puts more of an emphasis on having these relationships with our partners in industry. But these tools are all heavily subsidized right now. And we're seeing a little bit of that chipping away. Anthropic just announced pricing changes. It's happening all the time. So, it makes me wonder, is there a way to build some safeguards against that? Or are we going to be sacrificing too much functionality? And of course, we'd have to kind of look to our providers for, where they think things are going in that.
Well, we had some of this conversation, the four of us before, and I talked about some internal platforms that we're building and my concern with picking a winner and then putting all of our eggs in one basket. And I think all that's still true. However, I do think there's an opportunity, as we said, to diversify the stack, and it's more work for us as IT leaders, but to understand the needs of different user groups. And so it's entirely, I agree with Brandon 100% that there does need to be a general use tool that people widely have availability for in teaching and learning, and the students have access. That's the only way you're going to build some of this. So that's one answer. But in some of these other areas, if we're building something that is specific to a business process, but has an impact on thousands of staff in HR or whatnot, maybe putting it into Gemini is not the right choice. And maybe it is, and I'm sure the Google people would have a different perspective, but maybe that's something that needs to be in that open source front-end platform that we build. I don't know. I think there's a lot of answers to those questions, and it's going to involve a number of partners, a lot of trust, and a lot of recognition of the market changing as it happens. I mean, I will say, as I said to them in there, I'm notably more comfortable just as a business leader making those decisions with Google or with Microsoft than I am with the pure AI companies and putting things into their SaaS products that, may not be around, or we may not be contracting with them in a few years. It's a very different conversation than it is with Google or Microsoft, who are core parts of our stack for many reasons.
And from the solutions engineer perspective, I like to talk to folks about cost consolidation. Do you really need those third-party external systems, or can we drum up or dream up a solution within Workspace? I just showed you AppSheet and AppScript and the power of vibe coding a solution, and I showed you a very simplistic solution. So that cost consolidation idea could help offset some of the cost increase that you're anticipating.
We want to recognize we're at time. However, we can take this last question, and we'd love to, but if anyone needs to get up and take a break before the next session, please feel free. But we'd love to take your question too.
Yes, please do not wait on me. So the question I have is, as we look to the future, and certainly there's a lot of discussions happening at different universities. We're all in all these different places. I mean, I always enjoy hearing different campuses talk about their journeys and where they're at. At mine, the discussion is about how do these technologies deliver strategic outcomes? And that is a basis for the investments in the technologies that enable them. And so the discussion is about how do you get there, what does that look like? And as we look at all technologies, at least how I think about them, the technology is the last step, right? The real question is, what do you see to create, what workflow, what data enables those capabilities, and then how you apply the technology to enable that. And what I'm curious about is if you're also thinking about those things too, if those are the pressures that are coming to you from your leadership, how are you preparing for that? How are you getting your data environment in a place where you can maximize the value from it? How are you building process engineering capabilities so you can go work with organizations across campus to design that? What does that look like for your campuses?
No. Is that a good enough answer, Scott? I think that's a really complex question, and I think that it is my hope, and I meant to say some of this earlier, is that some of the promise of what we can do, and we're doing a lot of proof of concepting of what the tools can do, what the technology can do to enable those strategic outcomes you said, will impress enough people in the right places to enable that bigger, more difficult conversation to happen, because that conversation is, at least in my environment, near impossible.
At Notre Dame, we've got, I think we're seeing some of the biggest AI gains, or at least potential gains, in places where the data is already sort of consolidated around business processes. So other platforms, it's okay to name, ServiceNow would be one, and Snowflake, our enterprise data warehouse is there. They're great tools that are being built into those ecosystems. I mean, there's AI being sort of infused into SaaS everywhere, but we've got to be strategic about where we want to actually invest in those things. Not all of them are cost effective or worth it, but that sort of vertically integrated stack of data and capability is really good. And truth be told, that's a lot of what's happening in Google as well, because it's integrating its aware of our data access controls and things like that. But outside of those stacks, this is where go pre-AI. This is where your integration strategy comes into play. I spent years trying to get people to build APIs on top of our ERP, and telling them, eventually you will want to reuse these things. And
How'd that go?
It's okay. They're there. It's not quite the clean abstraction layer I wish it was, especially now, but it's there. But it would always be, I'm just building this app. I can go it's right there. I can just hit the database. And I said, no. Like, you're going to want this abstraction layer. When? Okay, now, right? Because if I can put, say, MCP over that AI or API layer, well, now I've got something where there's a whole new interface that can interact with that. I've just painted it as though we did it perfectly. Like it's a mess. Like we have some of that in place, but I think you've got to go back to that integration strategy to enable AI to take advantage of it.
Yeah, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and please find us. We'd love to talk to you.
That's all.
Thank you. That was fun.